time is it? Good morning, Leah. Hi, Rosie. Hi, Paul. It's a lovely day. Well, it's quite nice, quite warm. Hi, Claire. Hi, Mary and family, I'm sure. Hi, Sam. Not seen you for a while. Good to see you, mate. Sam, how are you? Coming in thick and fast. Hey up, Luke. How are you doing, son? All right. Good morning, Scott. Hi, Christine. That looks like we'll probably start. We'll get Tigger out of the way. There you go, Tigger. There you go. Right, off you go. Right. Today I'm going to continue the stories that we've been giving about how we became Christians and our testimony. Hi, Barbara. So this is mine. Today I've not got much in the way of notes because obviously it's a story I know reasonably well. It's got a memory verse there to remind me to fit that in. Hi, Frida. Hi, Mavis. So I'm 50 this year and I've been involved with Christianity the majority of my life. Mum and Dad became Christians when I was a toddler, 2 or 3. Obviously I don't remember it. And during those early years, sort of up to being about 10 or 11, to be honest, I can't really remember how I fitted in with God. I can't really recall it. I went to a church and I remember being part of that, but I don't really remember sort of much about that in terms of making decisions or anything really. Where it started to change for me was when I started big school, and I reacquainted myself there with a lifelong friend of mine, Mark Smith. And when I went to the big school, bumped into Mark again. I knew Mark anyway from Handsworth Top. We'd hung about a bit on Handsworth Top and been to a youth club there and whatnot. So Mark, who went to the church that we go to, our church, it was a different building then, and it was called Handsworth Full Gospel Church, but it's the same church. Mark went to that church, this church, with his dad, Pete, and Christine, and his sister. So they invited me down to their meeting. And to be honest, it was a pretty big deal. The youth meeting at Handsworth Full Gospel Church or Sheffield Christian Life Centre, it was a really big thing. I reckon there were probably something like 25, 30 years ahead of the time, genuinely. Must have been 45 to 55 kids there. And by kids, I mean up to 20, 21-year-olds, but starting from sort of 10 and going upwards. And it was a full-on praise meeting, worship, word. It wasn't lightweight. It wasn't a youth club. It was a powerful meeting for young people. It was radical. And looking back, it was more radical than I could have imagined, because now we would think it was radical. So I threw myself straight into this, became a Christian. I suppose if I wasn't before, I made that commitment. Got baptised in the Holy Spirit, got baptised in water, went to youth clubs and youth meetings, well, not youth clubs, youth camps and things like that. And for sort of 5 years or so, was really involved in the things of the church, spoke at various meetings, played the drums, and I was, very, very connected with God, and very connected with the Holy Spirit, and very connected with Jesus, read my Bible. It was an exciting time. And then I got to the point when I was sort of 16, 17, left school at 15 actually, left school, went to be an apprentice in a garage. And, life changes. And I struggled a bit. I struggled to find my place in that. I didn't really think that at the time. I wasn't unhappy. But looking back, I can see how I drifted. Our church was going through a trauma at the time. I'm not blaming anybody for me drifting away from church because of that. It's always our choice. But I do also recognise that some of the draw that had me at 15 and 16 was gradually decreasing. And I was involved with I was involved in growing up. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. You sort of, you're finding your feet, you're becoming an adult. And I'll be honest with you, even now at my age, at 50, I get distracted by the things of the world. I get distracted very easily. So at that age, I was even more so. I'd be like, I was all over the place. And I think that's normal. I don't think there's anything wrong with me doing that, but I do feel that it meant that gradually, over a period of time, I lost interest in God. Now it's interesting, if people talk about backsliding, don't they? And they sort of intimate that you backslide and then a decision's made, one day, I'm no longer a Christian. That's not how it works. I don't think so. I'm not telling you that's fact. Terence Clark, fact. No, I don't think it is how it works. That's not how it worked for me. I gradually lost my interest in Christianity. I gradually lost my love for God. And it happened over a period of several years. So that, I got involved in things that were not particularly healthy to Christianity. Some of them were not actually all that, they weren't bad particularly, but they took my eye off the ball. And, you go from school where you're sort of, I was never a big noise at school, but you're sort of one of the more prominent people, being in the oldest year. And then you go to work in a garage where you're a nobody. And you're sort of finding yourself again, aren't you? And so I got to an age where I was sort of like 20, and by then I would say that I wasn't a Christian. I think if somebody had discussed my Christian faith with me, certainly as I got a bit older than that, I would have said, no, I'm not a Christian, I've been brought up as a Christian, but, I suppose you'd say I'd lost my faith, I guess you'd say that. But I was never angry about God, I never hated God, I was a bit weird about Christians in church, to be honest, but, and I think I can still get there if I want to be, but that's just me being weird about people. But no, I think back then, I think it was more, I just drifted apart from it. I drifted away from it. So time went on, and then in my early 20s, I had a decent job. I had a car. I bought a house, and I was okay. But I think when you've had a connection with God as a young person, we're praying this the other day, and actually, yeah, we are all a bit weird. We're praying this the other day in the prayer meeting about connecting with God at a young age. It's really, really valuable, really valuable. But whenever we connect with God, it's a spark point. And I had connected very forcibly with God, and I think that people that are like me that have done that, it's very hard to sort of walk away from it because you've known Jesus, you've known reality, and so anything else is just not as good, and it's just not as fulfilling. And it sounds like a cliche. I know it does. I recognise even while I'm saying it, as it's coming out of my mouth, it sounds like a cliche. But it is true. I wasn't fulfilled, and there was a God-shaped hole in my life. And even as I'm saying, I'm like, Terence, what are you saying? It does sound like, but that was the way it was. So I remember I'd been out one night. I came back and I parked the car up, and as I said, I was a happy guy. I got a nice carry-on, and. But I looked at my car, which was beautiful. I love cars are my thing, and I'm like, I saved up to buy this thing, and it was a 20 injection Capri if you're into cars, which you're probably not. And I loved it, and I'm like, you know what, God, I've got this, that, and then, but there was something missing. So I decided I'm probably about 22 then. I decided that I needed to make a decision once and for all. If Christianity was, as my grandma would have said, all bunkum, that's what she would have said, my grandma. If it were all bunkum, then I needed to banish it from my life. I needed to exercise it from my life and deal with it rather than it clinging on to me emotionally. But if it wasn't bunkum, and if Jesus did exist, I couldn't afford to ignore that. You cannot afford to ignore Jesus if he's real. And if he's not real, then you need to make that decision and move on. So that's what I decided. I needed to investigate, for a better expression. So over the next sort of 6 months or a year or so, I did that, and I went to different churches than our own because I didn't really want the pressure of walking back into our own church where people loved me. They did. I mean, there's people that have prayed for me since I was 11 years old. The likes of Pat and Trev and Charles and Frida and Pete and Christine and many others. I don't want to leave anybody out. And I recognised that. I mean, I was a decent man. And so I didn't want to sort of put them through like an emotional turmoil of like, Terence is getting back to be a Christian. I didn't know what I wanted. So I went to different churches and explored God a bit. Spent time with people that didn't know me, and it helped me. And I bumped into a guy called Barry Manson, who's still a good friend today. He was the leader at the King Centre Church at the time. And he got me involved with one or two guys and people that prayed with me and talked to me. And gradually I reached a point where I said, you know what? This isn't bunkum. This is reality. This is how I want to live my life. And I made a decision to come back to God. And I did turn my life around, and not that it was that bad, but I turned my life around, drifted back, drifted away from the things that were taking my mind into different directions, and recommitted my life then to God, and moved back in the world, back to our church. I was never going to leave our church. I did say to Barry early on, look, if I come to your church to become a Christian, I'll go back to with Hamilton Gospel Church, because that's where I belong. That's where I've grown up. And he was fine with that. You know what? I remember him saying at the time, I'm not about building the King Centre. I'm about building the kingdom. And so if I want to leave us with anything, I want to leave us with a few things. First of all, when we put effort into people, it isn't wasted. I think they called the couple that Barry put me in touch with, I think they called them Richard and Elaine. And I think they lived on a road called Rupert Road. And I went to their house a few times. I can't remember anything other than that. And possibly they don't remember me at all. But that time I spent with them wasn't wasted. Not only did they speak into my life, but they cared about me. They really, really cared about me. And that meant a lot to me, and it still does. And when I came back to our church, Ian Somerville spent hours with me, every Tuesday night with me for an hour in the vestry at the back of the old building. And we'd talk for an hour, and I'd share with him my irritations about Christians and about church and about rules and about how it should be. And and he listened to me. He cared about me, and that meant a lot to me at the time. It really did. That still does. So that's the thing. First of all, it's never wasted time. Never wasted time. When we spend time with people, it's not wasted on them. It's not wasted on us as well. I relish the time that I get a chance to speak to people if they want me to talk to them, because I know how much it meant to me when I was in a similar situation. But what I also want to leave us with this is, the Bible talks about if you look for God, you'll find him. And you will. If you look long enough for God, you will find him. You will find Jesus. Because ultimately that's where everything leads to. Everything leads to God, and everything leads to Jesus. There is no getting away from it. If you look for God sincerely, you will find Jesus. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth. I know this scripture, I don't need to read it out, but John 14:6, Jesus answered, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And that was my experience. The other stuff I'd got, I wasn't a rock star or a millionaire, but I was okay. I was doing all right, but it wasn't fulfilling. And I'm doing all right now, but I am fulfilled because I've got Jesus in my life. And the other stuff that I've got, the problems that we've had over the years, which we have, me and Rachel, and I have as an individual, God has held my hand through them, and that has been immense in my life. So that's me. I hope that all made sense. It was a bit sort of spontaneous, which I like to have things written down so I know where I'm going. But I'm like crazy today. Listen, everybody, have a lovely day. It's good night from me, and it's good night from him. Good night. Goodbye. Have a lovely day.